Hello, and welcome back to the Loco Files. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the Great Western Railway 4300 class. The Great Western Railway 4300 class is a class of 260 steam locomotive designed by George Jackson Churchward for mixed traffic duties. 342 were built between 1911 and 1932. Withdrawals of the class began in 1936. Despite this, the class survived until 1964 when the final members were withdrawn, and two have survived into preservation. In 1906, Churchward fitted a more powerful standard No. 4 boiler to his successful 3100 class to create the 3150 class. These showed themselves to be successful locomotives, but their 65-ton weight and 2,000-gallon water capacity meant they were restricted to suburban passenger traffic. Churchward was looking to replace a wide variety of his predecessors' 240s on secondary duties. In 1911, he therefore designed a tender version of his 3150 class, which would be suitable for a wide range of intermediate duties. The class was a total synthesis of standard parts, using the outside cylinders of the Saint, the wheels of the 3100 and the No. 4 boiler in its superheated form. No prototype was required as the fundamental design had already proved itself. The locomotives quickly proved themselves to be so useful that they were produced more or less continuously in a series of batches over a 12-year period, sometimes incorporating some detailed differences. Two further lots were built in 1925 and 1932 by Churchward's successor, Charles Collett. The first 20 examples, numbered 4301 through to 4320, were delivered by Swindon Works between June and October 1911. These had inside steam pipes and were among the first Great Western locomotives to be fitted with top-feed apparatus. Numbers 4311 through to 4320 had boilers designed to operate at 225 psi, but only 4315 and possibly 4316 ever worked at that pressure. 3 further batches were ordered, totalling another 40 locomotives, and were built at Swindon and delivered between June 1913 and May 1914, before the onset of the First World War impeded further production. These locomotives and all subsequent examples had their frames lengthened by 9 inches at the rear to give better access for maintenance as well as providing more room in the cab. The class proved to be just the type that was needed during the 1914-18 war, and were accordingly built in considerable numbers during that period. 6 batches totaling 100 locomotives, numbered 4361 through to 4399, 4300, 5300 through to 5359 were built between May 1915 and September 1918, and a further 10 locomotives built between January and June 1919. From 1917, detailed changes were made to the design, giving it a better weight distribution between the wheels, which were later applied to other members of the class. 11 members of the class were transported to France during World War I in the service of the Railway Operating Division of the British Army, and these were 5319 through to 5326 and 5328 through to 5330. One of these members survives into preservation. The first 3 of these lots were for 70 locomotives built between June 1919 and July 1921, numbered 5370 through to 5399 and 6300 to 6341. Lot 216 was for a further 28 locomotives, but Swindon Works was then unable to keep pace with the demand for them, and only the first 20 were completed after delays between March and December 1923. The remainder were later built under Lot 230 in 1925. One member of this batch, number 6320, was converted to oil firing between 1947, and the equipment was removed 2 years later. A little more on that later on. As Swindon Works were unable to keep pace with the demand, an order was placed with Robert Stevenson and Company in 1921 for 50 locomotives. The first 35 of these, forming Lot 218, were built by the company between April 1921 and January 1922. The remaining 15 members of the class were built at Swindon from parts manufactured by Robert Stevenson between November 1921 and January 1922. In 1925, numbers 7300 through to 7304 were modified for better balance and had detail alterations. In 1932, Collett built a further 20 examples in the 9300 series to a modified design with side window cabs, outside steam pipes and a screw reverse. He also extended the frames, increasing the weight to 65 tons, which placed them in the red band of route availability. After passing into British Railways ownership, these locomotives were modified back to a light buffer beam design and were renumbered 7322 through to 7341 between 1956 and 1959. The class were widely used in Devon and Cornwall, where the track had many sharp curves. It was found that the flange wear on the leading driving wheels became excessive as a result of these bends. In November and December 1927, additional weight was placed on the front end of 4 examples, so that the pony truck would be forced to impart more side thrust to the main frame on bends. These locomotives reverted to their original state between January and March 1928. 65 engines of the 5300 series received additional weight on the pony truck, and 3,000 was added to their running numbers, temporarily creating an 8300 class. However, the additional weight placed them in the red category of route availability. From 1944 onwards, there was a shortage of locomotives in the blue category, and so the additional weights were removed, and the surviving locomotives resumed their original running numbers. The last to return to its original condition was 8393 in September 1948. The 4300s were maids of all work on the Great Western Network and later the Western region of British Railways, employing a standard number 4 boiler and support struts similar to those fitted to the 2800 class. The class very quickly earned a reputation for its ability to handle pretty much most types of traffic, from your local goods to your mainline expresses. According to OSNOC, they could handle the heavy goods work as well as the Aberdares, and could run up to 70 miles per hour with passenger trains. In other words, they were the ideal mixed traffic locomotive. Between 1945 and 1947, coal shortages caused the Great Western to experiment with oil-fired locomotives, and alongside a number of Castle, Hull, 2800 and 2884 class locomotives, a single 4300 number 6320 was converted to burn oil in March 1947. The experiment, encouraged by the government, was abandoned in 1948 once the extra maintenance costs were calculated and the bill had arrived for the imported oil. Number 6320 was converted back to burn coal in August 1949. We'll now look at some of the accidents and incidents involving members of the class. On the 13th of October 1928, locomotive number 6381 was hauling a freight train that was run into by a passenger train at Charfield in Gloucestershire due to the driver of the passenger service overrunning signals. 16 people were killed and 41 were injured. On the 1st of March 1937, a 4300 class locomotive hauling a freight train was involved in a collision with a passenger train at Langley in Buckinghamshire. 1 person was killed and 6 were injured. On the 7th of September 1945, locomotive number 6315 was hauling a mail and freight train that was derailed near Sunbank Holt, Denbighshire, due to the trackbed being washed out following the failure of the bank of the Shropshire Union Canal. One person was killed and 2 were injured. The train's consist, except for the brake van, was destroyed in the ensuing fire. In 1952, locomotive number 7311 overran a signal and was derailed by track points in Appleford, Oxfordshire, and on the 6th of September 1956, locomotive number 9306 was hauling a parcel train that overran signals and ran into the rear of an express passenger service at Ludlow in Shropshire. Although the class continued to be very useful and the final batch was relatively new, 100 of the earlier examples were withdrawn between 1936 and 1939, with the wheels and motion of 80 being used for the Grange and Manor class projects. It was intended to replace the entire class in this way, but the onset of the Second World War in 1939 brought a temporary halt to withdrawals, and the programme was never revived. Further withdrawals resumed in 1948 under British Railways ownership, but the last 6 examples survived until 1964. 2 members of the class were saved for preservation. Number 5322 is the older of the 2, as it was built in 1917 at Swindon Works. It was sent along with several other members of the class to France to haul munitions and hospital trains. There it was painted in War Department livery and was given the number ROD 5322. Demobbed in 1919 at Chester, it returned to the Great Western Fleet until its withdrawal from service in April 1964. It was sent to Wood & Brothers Scrapyard in Barry, South Wales, the first Barry locomotive to be subjected to a preservation fund. It was the 3rd locomotive to leave Woodham Scrapyard. 5322 thus ended up as the sole early 4300 class to survive into preservation. It was initially restored to working order, but was not steamed after 1975 until returning to steam in 2008 at the Didcot Railway Centre, restoring it to its 1919 War Department condition. 9309 is one of the final batch of 342 locomotives built between 1911 and 32. They were built with larger cabs and had weights attached to the buffer bin to place more weight on the leading pony trucks. This was done to reduce the wear on the leading driver wheels, as we discussed earlier. In 1958, the weight was removed from the buffer beam to give the locomotive a wider range of route availability. At the same time, it was renumbered 7325, and there is technically a 3rd member of the class, but it's a bit of a Frankenstein. It was rebuilt from a 5100 class, number 5193, to become a small boilered version of the class, and it was numbered 9351 and is affectionately known as the Mongrel, and you can see that on the West Somerset Railway. I'd like to thank you all for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a like. Feel free to comment down below your memories of the 4300s, whether it's riding one in revenue earning service back in the days of British Railway, or whether it's in preservation. I don't think I've actually ridden behind a 4300 in Pres, but I could always be wrong. But yeah, if you enjoyed it and you want to see what we cover in the future, feel free to subscribe. Also, this is the first episode I'm recording with my brand new microphone. Hopefully you guys notice an improvement in audio quality. I am still trying to figure out how the hell this thing works, so any comments, any constructive criticism and feedback is really appreciated, and yeah, hopefully if it needs to improve, it can improve, and I'm not a complete idiot. I am a complete idiot, but shush. But yes, anyway, thank you, and goodbye.